What we do here is look at what the evidence is showing, right? Pulling ourselves out of any political lenses, any political ideas, look at what the evidence is showing and say, what's actually happening? Anytime we see major global events like we're seeing right now with the impeachment process that's happening in the United States, there's many ways to engage with it and look at it, right? And typically people will get very mentally and emotionally engaged in the process, right? We put our politics hat on and we get all politically driven and oriented and all that sort of stuff, and we begin to see an event through that lens only, right? Whereas when we take a step back and we look at what I'm going to sort of make a case as the metaphysics of impeachment, which really is starting to look at what is this saying about us as humans? What is the human condition that's playing out right now? What does that say about our state of consciousness and state of being, right? So this is a way of taking consciousness and applying it to real life, i.e. it's not this theoretical sort of spiritual idea. It's how it's playing out in real life. Like we're seeing how our spiritual practices actually create a world around us or lack thereof, and what that creates, right? So when we start looking at things through that lens, as we're going to do in this segment, and really start to understand what it is that the impeachment process is showing us about our collective shadow as well as our individual shadow, I think we're going to get a clearer picture as to what we can actually do to either one, stay out of the drama, stay out of the anger and the emotional aggression that we're sort of being tempted to be pushed in, but at the same time, it gives us a stance to say, here's how we can actually solve some of the challenges that we have today and make a shift, because we've stepped back and we've started to see, oh, okay, there's an actual path over here, but when we're too close, we can't see that path, right? So the way I want to start this and open this up is there was an opinion piece that came out in CNN just the other day, and it was written by a guy by the name of Scott Jennings, who, just to get a little bit of an understanding of his lens here, he's a PR guy that also worked with, I'm going to pull up his exact thing, but he was a former special assistant to President George W. Bush, former campaign advisor to Senator Mitch McConnell, right? So there's going to be a bit of a Republican background here and all that sort of stuff. So when you think about some of what he's talking about, it's important to understand that lens. However, there are takeaways within this, regardless of his Republican background, that are neutral perspectives that are worth understanding so that we can make a case for what this is really showing us. To be clear, he doesn't make a case within this article about the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I'm simply talking about it from a standpoint of kind of showing some of the mainstream perspective of what's playing out, which is important to understand. So the article title is "Donald Trump was elected to break the elite. Of course they want to impeach him." Now, what's important about this sort of off the get is this is an idea that a lot of people who have been analyzing or looking at this who are outside of the political process. So for example, here at Collective Evolution, we don't engage in the political process from the sense of getting behind a candidate and pushing things and voting and doing all this sort of stuff. We instead simply see the political process as a reflection of how people currently are, the way they think. It starts to reveal how our world works and functions, right? When actions happen, when certain candidates get attacked, it starts to show, well, why are they getting attacked? Why are they getting no news coverage? That reveals an underlying truth. The underlying truth is that there's an attempt to block them. Well, why is that important to know? Well, it starts to realize, well, who's making that attempt? And when you keep following this line of questioning back, you start to realize there's a shadow government that is trying to maintain a specific agenda and focus only on specific people so that the public perception will always remain that these are the one or two people that we want to choose from, because those are the people that are pushing the agendas of the powerful and elite. And so we look at things through that process, right? Which is an important way of looking at it, because that actually helps us get to the truth of what's happening, not in every detail, but the truth of the big picture of what's taking place, which is important in waking up to realizing. This is why we say breaking the illusion all the time here at Collective Evolution as step one. You start realizing, oh, the world's not what we thought it was. Great, now I can see that more clearly, and I can take a different approach to creating a change or creating a shift. So there was an interview we did, it's actually here on CETV, but we did it a while ago when Trump was first elected. We got Richard Dolan on Skype and we were having a conversation with him, and we asked him his perspective on Trump's election.
he comes in as an outsider to the entire system and is vastly more disruptive than Hillary Clinton could ever possibly have been. Whether or not he's actually going to be a disruptor anymore at this point is looking less and less likely to me, to be honest with you. Um, I see Donald Trump as essentially having been checkmated already by the national security community.
Similarly to the way we were reporting on it and the way other people in the alternative media, independent media space, or independent researchers were saying, it's weird. Trump seems like an outsider. What does that mean? Or and again, this is the process of people trying to figure it out. As time goes on, things become clearer, and we're going to talk about that in this. But when you're first seeing it, you're going, something's different. We can't really figure out what's going on, who he's with, or what's happening, but something's different. This isn't business as usual, right? And this is one of the key takeaways here. And you might be listening to this or watching this and being tempted to say, yeah, but we knew this, or we knew that, or we knew. You didn't know, because the evidence wasn't there. What we do here is look at what the evidence is showing, right? Pulling ourselves out of any political lenses, any political ideas, look at what the evidence is showing and say, what's actually happening? And there's an important point that we're going to make here with regards to Q as well, that kind of is going to set a little bit of a picture of what might be going on within that I think is a really important reflection for us to look at here. But going back to this article a little bit, some of the key things that he talks about here with regards to Trump, and here's one quote. He says, "When the politicians are mad, so mad that they have to shut down all policy making to impeach the President of the United States on what constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley called wafer-thin evidence, Trump is winning." And of course, in that particular case, what he's trying to say is that, Trump is winning because he's doing exactly what he said he wanted to do, right? So this, in the context of the way this guy views it, he's winning because his whole goal was to disrupt the elite and make them shake in their boots to some extent, which, if we're being fair, we are seeing that. And we've said this from the very beginning. We're seeing that the elite, or the financial elite of the world, are bothered by this guy, and that are putting a lot of resources behind trying to blacklist or blackball him in particular ways within the media. I read a study one time that was talking about how about 90 to 95% of the media coverage from across the media over the last 4 years have been negative towards Trump, versus a much more average would be around 70% is in favor of the current president. So if you look at Obama's presidency, for example, 70% of the media was positive about him and only about 30% was negative. That's when you look at both Republican and Democrat media. But now you have, whether you're looking at Republican or Democrat media, 90 to 95% of it is negative towards him. Why is that? Well, when you start looking at who owns and controls the media, you start to get a bit of a clearer picture as to why that's happening. But not only that, it starts to paint this picture that somebody's uncomfortable with this leadership, right? Now, it doesn't mean, and this is where we have to understand the metaphysics of this, it doesn't mean that what Trump's doing is good for the people. This is the big sort of disconnect, right? People want to look at things as black or white, good or bad. When you do that, you will never see the truth, because you will always be limited to one of two narratives. Whereas what we have is a nuanced understanding of, or what we have is a nuanced playbook of things that are happening. There's a whole bunch of things that are happening that change the way you might view something. And then when you take a step back and you really look at what's taking place on a deeper level, it's not as simple as good, bad, right, or wrong. Trump is here to save the world, or Trump is here as an enemy to kill the world. And the challenge with that is that right now, people, even in the sort of alternative community, are looking a lot at what everything that Trump is doing is positive, and it's somehow helping humanity move forward. He's restoring America, right? And this is sort of the narrative, which you'll realize is incredibly politically driven and oriented, right? Which is where we're going to bring up some of the Q stuff a little bit later. Is you realize that whole narrative can be nothing more. Okay, so there's nothing that Q has said that isn't something that the average researcher and truther, if you want to call them that, would say already, right? So when you look at that and you say, is it possible that this could have been an agenda to reignite a whole bunch of people who had since left the political system and structure? Could this have been a way to get them fully reunited under the idea of engaging with politics really aggressively? It's something worth thinking about, right? But going back to this article here just for a second, another quote here, you have to remember, Donald Trump wasn't elected to fit in with these people, the political intellectual class, to make them happy or to become one of them. He was elected to break them, and that's apparently what he's done. Again, the evidence for the fact that, this is what he is doing, at least within whoever it is that helped get him into power, right? Which we've always presented as you're having somewhat of a power struggle within the elite. You have, and again, we talk about the Netflix documentary, The Family, which kind of indicates that there's various power structures. There's various families of people that, I'm not saying they're all bloodline oriented. In some cases they might be, but in some cases they aren't. They're just powerful groups that sort of politic, and they war with each other, but they're unelected officials that have a huge amount of impact and power over actual politicians. So what this might start to look like is you have a particular group of people that put Trump into place and another particular group of people that were always putting presidents into place, and now there appears to be a power struggle, and this powerful group of people doesn't like what's going on here. Now, it doesn't mean, again, that he's destroying everything they've ever built. It's that he's destroying some of the things that they built because it's obviously benefiting somebody. Is it the American people? Is it the people of the world in general? Not really. It doesn't appear that way. When I look at the stuff that have happened so far, yeah, there's some small things that have been a little bit, okay, you could see that as positive, and you could see these things as not so good, right? The point is are they really working for the good of the people, or are they working for the good of their rulers, right? And this is what we're starting to see, and this is what's becoming really, really clear here. The people that are all angry and pissed off, whether they're at Hillary Clinton or the Democrats, or whether they're at the Republicans and Trump, it doesn't matter. You are giving your power away by being that way, and thus you're powering systems and infrastructures that do not work in your favor.